Howdy y'all, welcome back. Thank you for being here. I must preface this video by saying that while a majority of what I discuss today will come with the obligatory notes of reference, the overarching theme discussed today is still considered to be only a theory. And seeing as this is a theory that not many are willing to discuss, I'm going to repeatedly make notes of the sources, albeit I will also be sharing my 2 cents. When it comes to our view of the old world, or even what the concept of the old world truly encompassed, the first piece of literature I'd like to discuss becomes something that's truly fascinating. Known as the Oera Linda Book, this manuscript was originally founded or put forth to the public after being discovered in family archives in the year 1867. A man named Cornelius Oera Linda handed this alleged ancient document over to Elko Verwees, the head of the Library of Friesland, claiming that this manuscript would change the very understanding of human history. We're then told that the Friesland Library rejected this manuscript, citing its ideas were too radical to ever publish, and they questioned the book's authenticity. De Linden had claimed that the Oera Linda Book had been in his family for generations, written possibly as early as the 9th century, and passed down to him through his maternal grandfather. He claimed this secret knowledge contained in the book was apparently kept amongst a few elite families who, much like cults, coveted the true history of the world by keeping secret manuscripts like these locked away. Eventually, murmurings of the Oera Linda Book reached the Frisian Society for History and Culture, who concluded not only was the work authentic, but the claims within the work would actually reshape humanity's knowledge of history. And thus, the Oera Linda Book was immediately translated and published. The contents of the book are also ridiculous, if not one of the most interesting things we could really talk about. Essentially, in this book, according to the Oera Linda, this written history begins in 2194 BC, when a utopia of culture existed on a landscape in the North Sea known as Atland. From Atland, these seafaring people lived peaceful lives in massive fortified cities which dotted the coastline. However, a great cataclysm was said to have reached Atland in 2194 BC, causing the land to quickly sink into the ocean. However, due to their nature as a robust seafaring people, many Atlanders survived through sailing vessels which landed on various other continents throughout the realm, with a majority finding homes. Some interpret this as washing ashore, as far away as the mountains of Kashmir. Let's take a second to look at that theory so far. We have Atland, a kingdom in the North Sea that was said to be a utopia, and home to an advanced group of people. Clearly, we can make the similarities here between Atland and Atlantis, and Atland was said to have been submerged during a great flood, a great cataclysm. This theory then continues by postulating that one group of Atland survivors literally washed ashore in the mountains of northern India before the waters fully receded. Quoting the actual translation that I came across, and I quote, "In the heart of Findusland, upon a mountain, lies a plain called Kashmir that is extraordinary." After discussing how Atlanders settled this plain directly after the flood, the Oera Linda Book then continues, and I quote, "There was a child born whose mother was the daughter of a king, and whose father was a high priest, barred from having children. In order to hide the shame, they were obliged to renounce their own blood. Therefore, he was taken out of the town to poor people. As the boy grew up, nothing was concealed from him about his past. So he did all in his power to acquire wisdom. His intellect was so great that he understood everything that he saw or heard. The people regarded him with respect, and the priests were afraid of his questions." End quote. Something else worth mentioning before we dive a little bit deeper into this narrative about the Oera Linda book is that in the current narrative, or in the mainstream history that we have today, there is not a lot of discussion, one, about the Oera Linda book, and two, about Atland. Yes, we have a lot of deep dives into Atlantis and where it could possibly be, but another mythical island that was said to have existed in this landscape was actually the island of Frisian, because before it was considered part of the mainland, Frisian was considered to be its own island. And I believe that is worth mentioning before we dive deeper into this concept of Atland and the Oera Linda book. Maybe you see where I'm going with this, but when the young boy, this Atlander, born in Kashmir, reached adulthood, something miraculous happened, and I quote, "While traveling, he fell in with a Frisian sailor who was serving as a slave and who taught him Frisian manners and customs. He bought the freedom of the slave, and they remained friends until his death." The next quote from the Oera Linda book actually illustrates how this boy that was born in Kashmir but who came from Atland, at least his family tied back to Atland, he began to formulate his own beliefs, and then he began to teach others. And I quote, "Wherever he went, he taught the people not to tolerate rich men or priests, and that they must guard themselves against false shame, which everywhere did harm to love and charity. The earth," he said, "bestowed her treasures on those who scratch her skin. So all are obliged to dig and plow and sow if they wish to reap, but no one is obliged to do anything for any other unless it be out of goodwill. He taught that men should not seek in her bowels for gold or silver or precious stones, which occasion envy and destroy love. To embellish your wives and daughters," he said, "the river offers her fair stream. No man is able to make everybody equally rich and happy, but it is the duty of all men to make each other as equally rich and as happy as possible. Men should not despise any knowledge, but justice is the greatest knowledge that time can teach, because she wards off offenses and promotes love. The man from Kashmir's first name was Yesus, but the priests who hated him called him foe, that is, false. The people called him Krishna, that is, the shepherd, and his Frisian friend, who he had freed, called him Buddha, meaning purse or bounty, because he had in his head a treasure of wisdom, and in his heart a treasure of love." End quote. The full text is actually available online, but essentially this Oera Linda book, again, said to have been composed in the 9th century or earlier, then continues by saying that Yesus traveled for exactly 12 years, teaching the poor to avoid priests and merchants and to value the sanctity of life. Yet when Yesus passed on, the Oera Linda continues by saying that the same priests and merchants returned to the lands where Yesus had taught, claiming to be his disciples, where they collected all the riches and valuables of the people in Yesus's name, citing his own beliefs on poverty and humility. These merchants and priests then made idols of Yesus's image and basically gave the first identifiable logo, the cross symbol. Thus, the Oera Linda book claims, and again, all just a theory, but it claims that not only was Yesus an Atlander, or from Atlantean origin, but in this theory, Atlantis was located in the North Sea. And it also poses the idea that after the alleged Great Flood that sunk Atland, many landed in India, either on the mountains or retreating to the mountains for safety. It is then theorized that Yesus, with Atlantean blood, was actually born in Kashmir and was the son of the same type of priest that eventually subjugated his teachings. Yesus renounced wealth and riches, instead focusing on teaching people how to live a more peaceful and productive life. Do you see where this is going? This Yesus character gained a large reputation, and after his passing, the same merchants and the people he spoke out against used his image and his teachings to become exceedingly rich, in a reverse Robin Hood sort of situation, where the rich were actually taking from the poor to give to themselves. Thus, we're told through this vast manipulation of the teachings of this Yesus, the familiar and still strong church was born, and through the piety, which became key to its teachings, this system of control became the richest in the world. Again, this is all just a theory, a story, but one that was first discovered or rediscovered in 1867, but purported to be written in the 9th century or earlier. However, the contents of the rest of the Oera Linda book are equally as mind-boggling. For one, the manuscript continually makes mention of great cataclysms that have repeatedly affected mankind since the beginning of time, largely given credit to a higher power for saving humanity throughout numerous sudden, short-lived, violent events, which possibly impacted the entire earth. The text alleges that Europe and other lands, including in Asia, for a large part of their history, were ruled by a succession of folk mothers, presiding over a large order of celibate priestesses dedicated to the goddess Freya, who was considered the incarnation of Mother Earth and the daughter of the Earth Mother, Jartha. The Oera Linda book also claims that ancient Frisians were closely related to other seafaring cultures of the realm, stemming from their Atland or Atlantean Atlantis roots. And this is how these earliest civilizations, in this theory, were able to spread similar societies across the earth. The Oera Linda book dives further into this, claiming that the ancient Frisian alphabet was actually the precursor to the Greek and Phoenician alphabets, making Frisian the first written language, the language of Atlantis. Something else this manuscript does is ignore large parts of the currently accepted history, or the history that is in the timeline today. But seeing as this was said to have been written over 1,000 years ago, I'm not really sure how modern scholars can use the disagreement in this text with the current narrative as a clear sign that the Oera Linda is a forgery. And yet, just like mostly everything in history that seems too outlandish or too fascinating to be true, mainstream academia by the year 1880 had actually concluded that the Oera Linda was a forgery or simply a theory that didn't merit any truth, although whom it was written by and its true purpose are still up for debate. However, what if any of the theories proposed in this Oera Linda book actually held any truth? For the next part of the narrative certainly makes us at least ask a few more questions about why this book remained so relevant until it was banned. The Folkist movement in Germany, also called Volkism, arose in German-speaking lands in the late 19th century, seemingly after the divides created amongst the society after the Austro-Prussian and Franco-Prussian Wars, respectively. Volkism called for the rebirth of Germany as a unified world power with a focus on its ancient roots and origin. In search for literature to support this movement, the Oera Linda book was supposedly rediscovered by German historian Hermann Felix Wirth around the year 1922. For 11 years, he was said to have studied this manuscript before adding further translations and publishing the Oera Linda book in 1933. Referring it to all German residents as the New Nordic Bible. Wirth considered this manuscript to be a genuine example of the earliest Nordic history, which tied not only Germany's history to India, but also addressed the often discussed link between the Abrahamic religions and India, and further strengthened the idea of the Indo-Aryan root of modern society. In 1934, the University of Berlin actually held a massive discussion panel among Germany's elites to discuss the Oera Linda Book and how to present this history to the rest of the world as factual. Could this have been a more obscure cause for the outbreak of the Second World War? With just one single meeting of Germany's elite in Berlin to discuss the Oera Linda Book's contents, the government formed the ancestral heritage organization known as Anna Nerby, led by Heinrich Himmler. What's strange is, just a few years later, even before the outbreak of the war, the Oera Linda Book was banned in Germany. Following 1935, this manuscript was actually considered to be largely forgotten. However, does true history really ever die? In 1977 and 1979, Robert Scruton published two books which not only addressed but expanded the theories of the Oera Linda manuscript, which include the full and complete manuscript translated for the first time. Within this new research, the Oera Linda Book is linked to Earth's secret power grid and other Earth mysteries, discussing the impact of ley lines and the harnessing of free Earth energy being the main reason that certain ancient structures were founded in specific locations. And it also proposes that some of these structures may actually predate the fall of Atland, or Atlantis. Other modern theories have further addressed the concept, like I am trying to do, making the obvious connection between the history described in the Oera Linda Book and the current narrative history we have of the ancient megalithic culture that appeared to have existed throughout most of the known world. We're also told that the Oera Linda Book makes clear reference to whom or what the bad guy was throughout most of history. In this case, the theory proposes it was the merchants who, in return, at least according to the theory, controlled the happiness and the faith of the people, as they controlled the money, which in itself was created, in this theory, to manipulate the people into working for the upper or ruling class, the Kayan or Khans or kings that ruled society. Essentially, the feudal system, in this theory, was created by the merchants who manipulated the teachings of Yesus to gain the riches and the wealth, the castles and the kingdoms all across our realm. Those who accepted quickly became kingdoms of the Holy Roman Empire, while those who refused were deemed to be pagans and attacked and subjugated under the unified quote-unquote Christian cause. Through these means, the merchant and priesthood took over much of the known world. And yet, this is just a theory. And at the heart of all this is one more issue. Who were the original soothsayers responsible for orchestrating all of this chaos? I assume you already know the answer. According to certain esoteric circles, one of the most sought-after lost texts of all time is that of the Palestina Book, or the Palestine Book. This book was supposedly composed from over 25 years of research by none other than Hermann Felix Wirth, the same man who helped rediscover the Oera Linda Book and who founded the Ancestral Heritage Organization in Germany. Within this lost work, he was said to have described the origin of the Aryan people, arriving in numerous locations after the Great Flood, but with most settling in both India and in Friesland, and then eventually intermingling with each other. These formed the sea peoples and the sea cultures of early literature, the Frisians being the most direct descendants of Atlantis in this theory, and they are then the progenitors for what is said to be the monotheistic religious belief, as they all worship the same singular Mother Earth goddess known as Freya. We're told Yesus's teachings thus arrived in Europe much later, already developed from further north and from India. We're told the Romans, the merchants, and the priests of Rome all considered these teachings of the Far East to be radical, at least at first, but eventually they found a way to monopolize them. This distortion of the original Eastern teachings of Yesus was caused, according to this theory, again just a theory, by the merchants and the royalty, who themselves did not make up a large population, but following the suppression of Yesus, they grew rapidly in number. They became more of the middle class, so to speak. We're told the multiple schisms within Christianity in this theory have been most likely caused by attempts from those with knowledge of the true history, making attempts to either prevent or to heighten the exploitation. However, the history gets even stranger, as in the late 1970s, so rather recently, Herman Felix Wirth, the alleged author to this theory and the one who first published the rediscovered version of the Oera Linda, he gave an interview shortly before his passing, in which he stated that Judaism and the Jewish people stemmed from nomadic peoples that had originated in the Gobi Desert, who lived on the edges or outskirts of one of the greatest civilizations ever known, and they worked as what could be seen as early merchants after they were freed from slavery. According to this same interview, Wirth claimed that nearly all of the earliest kings were from a caste or class of sea peoples, who were a form of the Frisians from Atland or Atlantis, but who have been called hundreds of different titles throughout recorded history. However, the next claim in this theory really does add this impossible cherry on top of everything we've talked about. Wirth says that in the travels of the Sea Kings of Atlantis, they eventually reached deep into northern Africa, where they discovered displaced merchants from the aforementioned Gobi Desert Kingdom. These merchants, apparently to save their own lives, told the Frisians of the vast and epic kingdom situated in the Gobi Desert, which these merchants referred to as Shambhala, but which may commonly be called by us theorists today as Tartary or Grand Tartaria. Thus, this theory, again just a theory, positions that Christianity was at one time the main belief of Atlantis, preserved or further developed within the reaches of India before taking hold, and thus other forms of later religions would actually be an offshoot of an earlier Atlantic teaching, at least in this theory. Thus, the Palestine book was described by Wirth to conclude all of his theories by essentially claiming, and again, just a theory, but claiming that the illegitimate son of a high priest in Kashmir renounced his faith, which had been diluted, that he felt was too directly influenced by money and merchants and outside forces. So he renounced wealth and worldly possessions, and he created a movement, this belief system, that became so powerful it eventually reached Greece and Rome and even Jerusalem. However, these humble teachings were in direct conflict with the ruling, the feudal, the merchant class. And directly following his passing, we have these false idols of this man, Yesus, that were created as well as a religion in his name. And through this belief system, which used piety as a means of control, they actually diluted the original Atlantean religion. And again, the priesthood grew powerful, the merchants grew powerful, but the original teachings were corrupted. And again, this is all just a theory by Wirth. But in this, the original Atlanteans are then given credit for founding this megalithic culture that flourished throughout Europe and beyond, with residue also being seen in Africa and Asia. And thus, in this hypothesis, in this theory, the megaliths also tied directly to the flood, to Noah, to the giants, as it is theorized that humanity from Noah's stock, so we can interpret that as those from Atlantis were much taller, stronger, and more physically robust than the humans that they intermingled with following the flood. This great size is then theorized as making the creating of these megaliths possible, and grants us a second striking question. How much of the old world could actually be related to a form of seafaring or megalithic or Atlantean culture, and could they all be one and the same? The Gobi Desert in this text was once the most bustling kingdom in the world, yet it was only after interaction with these Atlanteans or with the Frisians that a new culture was born, which became known universally, at least for a short period of time, as Tartary or Tartaria. The lost Palestine book was also said to have dived further into the concept of the meeting of the Frisians with the nomadic people of the Gobi Desert, thus forming this kingdom. Not only did this lead to a vast trade system that was said to have been put into place connecting Asia and Europe, but it's also of note that the displaced merchants in this theory are then said to have controlled much of the trade, leading to the foundation of their own kingdom in Khazaria. It seems these merchants were rewarded for introducing the two groups. They were, at least in this theory, the brain behind Tartaria. Now, diving into that further, the book postulates that before the meeting of the Frisians, or the Atlanders, and the tribes of the Gobi, before they met, we're told that this merchant population of the world was not largely concentrated in one specific area, and we're also told they were very nomadic. Yet, following the meeting of the Frisians and the Gobi tribes, and the society that formed Tartary, we can see that massive kingdoms began being established, especially in Khazaria. The landscape was known as Tartary or Grand Tartaria, and the once nomadic merchants began to settle in this fortified region, as Tartary was known for having fortified towns, much akin to castles in Europe or star forts in America. This also involved the settling of these merchants, and would you believe it? We're actually told this was right around the time period, at least in accepted history, that Ashkenazis began to grow rapidly in number until becoming the main sect of the Jewish worldwide population. I'm going to wrap up today's video there because there's not too much more I can say about these theories. If you're seeking a deeper dive into the history of some of the subjects discussed today, there will be some links down below, and I can also make a video about anything you'd like to hear me talk about further. But again, as this is just a theory, we don't necessarily have that much to go on. Or do we? Is the Oera Linda Book an elaborate hoax, orchestrated at the height of revolutions in Europe, whether for fame or wealth, or to shift the narrative? And through our discussion of the Oera Linda Book today, and its alleged contents, which have been translated over and over again, have we found any glaring holes that stood out to you? Can we see parts of this narrative where it appears that things may have been added by those who were the translators? And really, we have a whole slew of occult beliefs which stemmed from the Oera Linda Book, and they took over Germany just before the outbreak of World War II, leading to an internal conflict, and the Oera Linda Book was banned. But why would they ban something that was only a hoax, only a theory? Was this work suppressed, as we're told, because it was quickly proven to be false, or rather, was this work banned so people couldn't begin to unravel the mysteries that are decoded within?